please welcome the Vice Chairman and CEO of Expedia Group, Peter Kern, in conversation with Skift founding editor and executive editor, Dennis Schaal.
Peter, thanks for being here.
Nice to see you, Dennis. How are you?
You too. Pretty good. Hey, I wanted to start on somewhat of a somber note. So on Monday, we saw the passing of longtime Marriott CEO, Arne Sorensen. Very sad thing. You've been on the Expedia board since it was spun off from IAC in 2005. So you're privy to the ups and downs of the Marriott Expedia relationship. What kind of contribution do you think Arne made to hotel OTA relationships or travel distribution? How do you look at it? His legacy.
I didn't know Arne much. I've only been in the same room, as it were, and that was mostly in Zoom recently, a couple of times for some industry things. But obviously, he was a giant in the industry. Made Marriott largely what it is and what it stands for. And I think, we've had our ups and downs. I think Arne was a great businessman and certainly did what was right for his company. But I think we are enjoying a very good relationship with Marriott now. We look forward to continuing to do that. And obviously, we're saddened by Arne's passing and have reached out to our colleagues at Marriott to express our condolences. We're very sad to see him go, but I know we all had a huge amount of respect. Our chairman knew him well, and it's really sad. But
the relationship did change, like with the most recent agreement. You guys entered into some technology partnerships. You're now policing Marriott's wholesale rates. Mm-hmm. So things really did change in some respects, right?
Yeah, I think we're all learning, as we go, that there are more ways to help each other than not. I think we as a company are focused on that, not just this, tiring exercise of trying to beat each other up about commissions and other things, but rather how can we help each other in many other ways. And I think there's more ways we can help each other than there is, pennies on the table to share in commissions. So I think our optimized distribution, which Marriott essentially piloted with us and has been successful, and other chains are now adopting as well, has been a place where we can do it. And we think, given what our platform can do, that there are many other places we can help our travel supply partners, including airlines, but hotel chains certainly, in terms of monetizing their customers better. And that's what we aim to do. So I expect over time we'll be doing more for our supply partners rather than less, and finding more ways to find incremental value for each of us than beating each other up over a penny.
Right. So basically, how do you view what's the state of Expedia at this point? How do you view your position now, coming out of the pandemic, and in relation to some of your big competitors?
Yeah, I think we like our position. We've been very focused. I talked to you earlier on in the pandemic, and we've been very focused on, sort of working internally to fix ourselves, doing what we can to help our supply partners and our customers, of course. And I would say we're in the thick of it. We're doing the work. It's about execution. It's about rebuilding many parts of our technology stack to make them stronger, more resilient, faster, better for the customer, better for our business partners. There's a ton of work going into all of that, and we're in the middle of it. And I'd say, while we are coming out of COVID, we've got a ways to go probably still. It's going to be bumpy for a while, but we've really been focused on the stuff we can control, and COVID's not one of those things. So we obviously want to be smart and help drive our business coming out of this and compete. But we've been great beneficiaries for Vrbo. Vrbo's been a great use case, obviously, during COVID. We've been, doing our best in conventional lodging to drive business where it exists. Air has obviously been challenged. Your prior guest talked about corporate being challenged. All those things are real, but we're driving what's good. We're pushing into what's good, and we're working on ourselves to be in a better spot when we come out.
So Vrbo was certainly a star in the portfolio in 2020.
Yeah.
How do you view the competition with Airbnb right now? And what's next for Vrbo? How could you grow the company, grow the business?
Yeah, I think everybody loves to, talk about that competition, and certainly we compete in certain places, and we compete in the class of accommodation that Vrbo is strong in, which is the whole home space. But obviously, Airbnb spans other use cases, the room in a house, things like that, which we don't do. They're bigger in cities than we are, which has been an advantage traditionally for them, but probably a disadvantage during COVID. And in fact, in our strongest markets, we have gained share against them during COVID in not insignificant amounts. So we've had the benefit. I won't say that's because we're better. Our use case was really strong, and we were aggressive in it. Obviously, they have reach beyond our reach, and they have some classes of content, I'd say, that we don't, that we're not expert in and we're not long in. But so the way we intend to compete is basically that we're going to take Vrbo, push as hard as we can in the places where we have strong brand for standalone home rental, but we're also spending a lot of time wiring it through our core OTAs. So if there's a geography somewhere where Brand Expedia is our strongest brand and where Vrbo has no brand or essentially no brand, we will use Brand Expedia to drive alternative accommodations, and likewise hotels.com or whatever it might be. And that is part of our long-term strategy to expand our geographical footprint for Vrbo. And then, of course, we have our B2B business where we power a number of other travel partners, and we believe there's a lot of demand in that space for the alternative accommodation, and we think there's good opportunity there. As we get it wired through our OTAs, it will then flow into our B2B partners, and that will be a big opportunity.
So one of the things you've been talking about over the last few months is, trying to simplify your operations internally. But this whole idea of wiring Vrbo through your OTA, doesn't that add complexity to the business?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it does. It's a hard technological problem to solve. I won't say it's simple, but it's a core technological problem to solve. And what we're doing is really saying our technology platform, broadly described, we're turning it into microservices. We're turning it into very easily configured solutions so that we can go fast. And as we do that, it's all part of the same set of solves. So as we solve Vrbo through our core OTAs, it's really about solving Vrbo through our supply dimension, through our search and sort, how it all works. But once solved, it then gets blown out to lots of places. And that's the kind of thing we're trying to do, is solve the big problems, solve them discreetly, and then allow people to put them together, even our own brand, so that we can just accelerate innovation. And so no, it's not, it's a complicated idea, it's work, but it's part of the core work we are doing to simplify our tech platform.
There's been a lot of talk that you could create shareholder value by spinning off Vrbo or spinning off Egencia. You've kind of poo-pooed that, right? Has it been under consideration? Is it still an option?
Yeah, look, we always are looking to optimize value for the company, and to the extent we can simplify. We have sold off a few smaller businesses during COVID that are non-material, that just were not helping us. So we're always looking to optimize value, but I would say we're not focused on the sort of the games of valuation and moving pieces around just to generate a little upside in the stock. What I described on Vrbo is our strategy for how we think Vrbo competes and grows its business in alternative accommodations. Valuations aside, or momentary blips in valuation, I can't speak to the long-term value of Airbnb. Obviously, it's being valued very highly, but just to spin off Vrbo, which is everyone's favorite question these days, just to sort of get a moment of valuation upside and then screw up the long-term strategy of it doesn't make a lot of sense to us. So I'm more focused on the long-term growth of the business, and that's what we're trying to keep our eyes on rather than the ins and outs of transactions.
Right. So you're also trying to reduce your reliance on Google. You're going to still be marketing through Google, obviously, but you want to reduce the prior dependency. So you announced that you had removed your listings from Google Vacation Rentals. That was a free service, I believe. It still is a free service. But now you're not in it. Airbnb isn't in Google Vacation Rentals. I don't think Booking Holdings is. Is this sort of a pivotal moment where some of the large players are almost in unison, doing that to Google or trying to reduce their reliance?
Yeah, I can't speak to why everyone else is doing it. I think for us, it was very much just about whether it was adding incremental value for us. We didn't think the product was great in terms of the consumer proposition. We didn't think it was doing much for us. And therefore, we thought it was better to put our energy someplace else. And again, I've said it before, Dennis, I think we've talked about it. This isn't Google is inherently bad. It's if Google makes a fair marketplace, we're happy to participate. And if Google doesn't make a fair marketplace, which we think in some cases they are not doing, it is frustrating to participate in that. And we would obviously like to find other ways to optimize our business away from that. But it's not, Google is inherently good or bad. It's what are they doing in travel? What are they doing that we think is fair or unfair? And do we have ways to incrementally make money? And we are much more focused now on the incrementality of what we do rather than just, okay, we spend X, we'll spend X plus 5% next year. We'll spend it, now we're much more focused on the clinical work of, is it really driving better incremental business, or can we put the dollar somewhere else? And in the case of Google's vacation rental product, it just wasn't doing that much for us. If it was, we might have made a different choice. If we thought it was a good consumer proposition, if it added good value, we would have made a different choice, but it wasn't doing that.
Right. I got an audience question here. How do you plan to grow Expedia's brand awareness internationally to compete with Booking.com? And we heard earlier from Booking.com that they, are very intent on expanding in the U.S. as well. How do you view that?
Yeah, I think we have, I would say, I generally feel like we have a lot of upside on brand generally all over the globe. I've mentioned before, I think here, but certainly in other forums, that we're focused on driving whatever brands make the most sense in whatever geography. So for example, we've essentially made What If, our brand in Australia, our core brand there to drive right now as our hero brand, because we think it's more important than driving brand Expedia or hotels.com, by example. We likewise have an alternative accommodations brand called Stays in Australia that has been having a very good moment there, and we've been able to drive that. So we're less religious now about we need to drive all our brands everywhere, and much more focused on winning a market with whatever the right combination of brands are and driving those accordingly. So in some markets that will be Expedia, in other markets it will be hotels.com, in other markets it will be brands, probably many of the listeners haven't even experienced before. So I think we have a strategy around that, which will be very productive for us. And we are relaunching a lot of our brand advertising. Vrbo and its offspring have been pushing aggressively, spent way more on marketing than we ever have going into this year, and that will continue. We're relaunching the brand Expedia campaign in the spring sometime, and we think that will be a big driver, and obviously we will drive that into multiple geos around the globe, and this will continue. So I think we have a lot of upside generally in brand, and we're certainly going to compete aggressively in our home market, but we plan to compete aggressively in other geos as well. But again, with a much more, I think, sharpened view of which brands, what strategy, what are the tactics for that brand in the market, and I expect we will do better.
So about the brand Expedia campaign, I'm wondering what the focus of that will be, because you talked last week about trying to market Expedia.com as a place to book all parts of your trip. I mean, you've been a full service online travel agency forever. But what, the message wasn't getting out?
Yeah, I think the clarity of the message, frankly, was not great. We have many brands, and if you stack them up historically, and said, why would I pick one over another? It's not always been clear. One of the things we are keenly working on now is making sure that is clear. And Expedia, as the original all-purpose everything OTA, needs to be about, and we want it to be about, the whole trip, and people who want to take whole trips and want to have the right solution, the right service, the ease, the comfort of having Expedia with you when you travel, and the app, all the things we can keep you aware of. So there's a lot of work going into the product. There's a lot of work going into the brand exercise, but it's all to drive that consumer, who is not every consumer. Some consumers just want to book a cheap hotel. Some consumers just want to book a cheap flight somewhere. But the consumers, which is a huge swath, who want to drive, a trip that is simple and easy to execute, that has service and a back end that protects you. We think that's a huge part of the consumer market, and we don't think we've done an adequate job of selling that proposition that Expedia has always stood for. So we are going to drive that, and we're going to drive that through everything we build into the product for Expedia, brand Expedia consumers, in terms of what the app can do for you, how you can book, what we keep you aware of, et cetera. And that's an important piece of work for us right now.
Right. There'll obviously be a lot of consolidation coming out of the pandemic. And in your earnings call, you talked about regarding M&A, that you don't want to make some of the mistakes that Expedia made it in the past in making acquisitions. What were some of those mistakes, and how do you view it now?
Well, I think what we're going through now is sort of the reckoning of years of productive acquisitions, but not necessarily all the work we could have done to integrate the tech platforms and get to a place of real scale and speed and innovation. And that's important work. And when we're done with that work, not sure you're ever totally done, but when we're further along with that work, obviously it becomes then a lot easier to start to think about what you put on top of that strong platform. I think what I was alluding to is I don't want to make ourselves more complex just because there's some opportunistic acquisition where we can make a few bucks, when the big driver is going to be our ability to go fast, drive innovation, drive customer demand as a whole. So you can distract yourself with we think that's an accretive acquisition and it's opportunistic, but then it creates all this complexity and slows you down. And so we don't want to be in that business. And I think to the extent we are in the acquisition business in the future, it will be much more selective. It will be about expanding our capabilities and things like that, rather than just, chewing up brands all over the globe. Both we and frankly HomeAway, before we bought it, did that, and many of those brands are now, laid to rest somewhere around the globe because we didn't have a way to maintain them. We didn't understand how to maintain multi-brands in some places, and it died of its own weight. So I don't want to be in that business. I don't want to make ourselves more complicated.
I remember when you guys acquired Orbitz, that was a pretty problematic integration. That slowed you down for a while.
Yeah, I mean, Orbitz is still a terrific business for us, and I think still has opportunity, and that's why we're doing the work on brand separation and making sure we understand what every brand stands for. But yeah, when you go through that exercise, it is a tumultuous exercise to bring a company like that onto a platform which isn't a platform that's made to have multiple brands. And so now that we're building a platform that will easily sustain whatever brands and whatever throughput we want to put on it, it will become a different game for us, and we'll be able to look at it through a different lens. But again, you have to look at it through what does another brand do in another place, and why are you doing it, and can you easily put it onto the platform, or is that going to slow you down? Those are the things that's the lens we have to look through, not just is more good,
Right. Beyond the pandemic, everyone's focused on climate change, or should be focused on climate change. And you've talked about creating some new tools to help travelers make better choices in that regard. What kind of things are you thinking of?
Yeah, we're working through it in a number of ways, and frankly, we're early days, so I'm not patting ourselves on the back that we've done anything great, but we have decided it's going to be a core part of everything we do in the future, and how we build to make sure that in every opportunity we have to help consumers and suppliers, frankly, make the right choices on this, we are pushing that. We're starting some tests, for example, with reviews, where on a small part of our traffic, but where people who have certain identities, including somebody with a disability or somebody who may be Black or Latinx or gay or whatever, can tag their reviews to help other people with the same kinds of experiences or facing the same challenges. And as part of that, we're looking at people who are eco-focused. If you're somebody who is sustainability focused and you stayed somewhere and had a good or bad experience, your review might help somebody else who is sustainability focused. So it's little things, and it's going to be bigger things, and it's going to be, we're going to find ways to, give consumers more information on ratings of various trip types and hotels and air and other things, and how they rate against the others in terms of sustainability, and the market will hopefully drive the right kinds of innovation.
Peter, we have about 27 seconds. So an audience question: would Expedia ever see owning hotels as another opportunity for growth?
Yeah, we're not terribly interested in it, frankly. Hoteliers like Arnie, like others, are terrific at what they do. They're great at the hospitality business. We want to be great at what we do, which is technology to enable customers and suppliers to transact well and easily and have discovery and all of that. So it's certainly not something we're thinking about. It's the kind of thing that gets tossed around once every few years as a what if, but I don't think there's any reason to suspect we would have any interest in that in the future.
So we'll hold off on the reservations in Expedia Hotels.
No,
So
you can make reservations on plenty of hotels on our site. You don't need ours.
okay. Thanks, Peter.
Thanks, Dennis. Take care.